Okay. Just wait for a few seconds before we get started. Okay, here we go. Hello, everyone. This is George Thomas with CBN News, Senior International Correspondent, coming to you live from our nation's capital in Washington, D.C. This is day 2 of the International Religious Freedom Summit. This is the 4th time that the IRF have put on this event. It's a fascinating event. If you've been watching the last few hours of our broadcast, as well as yesterday, you will know that this brings together an amalgamation of different political leaders across a variety of political persuasions, brings people of faith from around the world, NGOs, human rights group, all focused on the issue of religious freedom. According to the organizers of the International Religious Freedom Summit, almost 80% of the world's population is enduring some form of religious repression. The numbers are upwards of 350 million Christians around the world are suffering for their faith. Muslims in Myanmar, from Buddhists to Thailand, to the Uyghurs in Urumqi in Xinjiang province, China, from the Falun Gong, all around the world. People of faith are suffering intensely for their faith, in essence. Today we want to talk, my next guest is a very important figure within the Ukrainian government of Volodymyr Zelensky, and he plays a particular role looking at the religious and ethnic affairs within the country. My next guest is Viktor Yelansky. Thank you so much for coming on the broadcast. Really appreciate it. You are the head of the State Service for Ethnic Affairs and Freedom of Conscience. As you know, I know many of you are watching the events taking place in Gaza, the war between Hamas and Israel. And as you know, I have been on several occasions over the last 8 years covering the war in Ukraine. And I want to bring our viewers' attention back to what is happening today in Ukraine, specifically in the territories that have now been occupied by Russian forces on the eastern side of the country. And the man who is in charge for President Zelensky's government to monitor the human rights and the religious freedom in the occupied territories, the Russian occupied territories of Ukraine, is Viktor. Thank you again so much for coming on the broadcast. So let's jump right into it. Can you tell us how are Ukrainian Christians today treated in the areas of the East that have now been occupied by Russian forces?
You mean occupied, but not occupied?
But occupied by Russian forces. For example, in the Donetsk region.
Actually, Russian troops and Russian militaries is grievous enemy of religious freedom, and we can different examples how Russian militaries intentionally killed clerics, closed prayer buildings, confiscated halls of kingdom of Jehovah's Witnesses, destroyed mosques, synagogues. I just like to remember priest Maxim Kozachina, who was killed by Russians being wearing in liturgical vestment. I'd like to remember name of Rostislav Dudarenko, priest of Orthodox Church of Ukraine, who was intentionally killed by Russians. I would like to remember about 600 cathedrals, synagogues, mosques, prayer buildings damaged or completely destroyed by Russian shelling.
Folks, if you are joining us right now, this is Viktor Yelansky. He is here in Washington, D.C. with me for the International Religious Freedom Summit. We're talking about Ukraine. Yes, there is a war that's still taking place in Ukraine. You probably are hearing a lot of noise in the background. Just know that I'm in a press room and there are other press agencies that are doing interviews just like I am. So I do apologize for the noise. If you've got any specific questions for Mr. Zelensky, or you want to have a question about the war in Ukraine, please go ahead and just put your questions in the comment section. And while you're there, go ahead and sign up for notifications so that you get these kinds of notifications as soon as we go live on YouTube. Now, keep in mind what Mr. Zelensky is talking about is, since the war in Ukraine started 2 years ago, the areas of the eastern part of Ukraine, which I have extensively traveled all throughout the Donbass region, what he is doing is chronicling what is happening to Christians in the eastern part of Ukraine that have been occupied, taken over by Russian forces since the war 2 years ago on February 24th. And what he just told us is over 600 cathedrals, prayer houses, Orthodox synagogues, mosques have
Jewish cemeteries
have been
were
destroyed.
by Russian militaries. And the main targets of Russian militaries are evangelicals, Baptists, Pentecostals, Adventists of Seventh Day, because they claimed as American spies.
So you're telling me that the Russian forces in these occupied territories in the east are specifically going after evangelical Christians, the Protestants, the Baptists, the Seventh-day Adventists, because they believe that they are an extension of the U.S. government?
They believe that they are American spies. They believe that they are not subordinated to Moscow Church, and they hate all any kind of freedom. And these people, I mean, these men and women of faith, are absolutely free. So they hate them, they banned them, they confiscated their prayer houses, and there are many, not many, but some people from occupied territory now in Washington, D.C., who survived during the Russian occupation.
Is it today dangerous for a Protestant evangelical Ukrainian to live in the occupied territories of Russia?
Yes, it's true. And sometimes the whole congregation went to Ukrainian territory. I mean, controlled by Ukrainian government. For instance, the whole Pentecostal congregation in the town of Balaklava in Crimea went to Ukraine in whole staff.
What has that done to the religious landscape? Because the eastern part had a very huge, very thriving evangelical Christian community. Has it been wiped out?
Some people are still in this territory because these people believe they do support their parishioners. They do support those who need support. And that is why they are still in Melitopol, in Crimea, in Donetsk, in Lugansk. But once again, their prayer buildings confiscated. Russians put militaries to their buildings, and
they turned the churches, the monasteries, the mosques into military headquarters,
to barracks, to gyms sometimes.
Gyms for the military to work out on.
Absolutely.
Are they storing weapons and other ammunition in those churches?
Yes, it's absolutely
it belongs to
common.
The military
it's
now.
absolutely common, and many people of faith just expelled from these places.
As I mentioned, it's your responsibility to report to Ukraine's President Zelensky about what is going on today. How concerned is President Zelensky about the deteriorating religious freedom condition today in the occupied territories of Russia?
I can say that President Zelensky is very much sensitive to this issue, and I have to report him on regular basis of all brutal violation of religious freedom on occupied territories. And actually, I do this. Actually, I do this, and actually, we ask our partners to support Ukraine and to condemn this violation on occupied territories.
If you are joining us, my name is George Thomas. This is Mr. Viktor Zelensky. He reports directly to Ukraine's President Zelensky on the matters of human rights and religious freedom violations in the occupied territories of Russia. Keep in mind, these are areas that used to belong to Ukraine more than almost 2 years ago, but now are in the control of Russian forces. If you've got any questions for Mr. Victor, please go ahead and just put them in the comment section, and I'll try to.
If I may,
to get
we do strongly believe that we will return these territories to Ukraine.
So you believe that Ukraine will get back?
I do strongly believe.
Yeah. So I'm sure that in these occupied territories, the Russian Orthodox Church is also practicing. Are they facing the same kind of intimidation, harassment, destruction of their churches, turning their Orthodox churches into military outposts? Do they face the same kind of harassment and persecution that the evangelical community, the Ukrainian evangelical community, face today in the occupied territories?
Russian Orthodox Church is only allowed church in this territory if behavior. For example, some priests who change the text of prayer and pray for peace, not for Russian victory, they expelled from the rank of a Russian church.
Wait a minute. So you're telling me that if you had a Russian priest who was in charge of an Orthodox church, and he says during Sunday service that I want to pray for peace between Russia and Ukraine, you're saying that his church will be stopped?
Patriarch Kirill approved the text of prayer on Sunday Mass. And this prayer is about the victory of Russia over Ukraine. If this or that priest changed the verses and pray not for victory but for peace, he would be expelled.
He'll be expelled.
You're right.
Do Russian Orthodox Christians today face persecution in the Russian occupied territories?
Actually not. Actually not, because contrary to, let's say, Nazi Germany, is not a strong movement against invasion. Probably you remember famous Barmen Declaration from 1933, when German evangelicals protested against war.
Exactly.
Unfortunately, we cannot see something familiar in current Russian Orthodox Church. Russian Orthodox Church, headed by Patriarch Kirill, is a part of chauvinistic military machine of Russian Federation. It's not just support aggression, it's a part of this aggression.
There is some controversy today in Ukraine, and I think a lot of people are bringing this to the forefront. And there is the accusation that Ukraine's President Zelensky is cracking down. He is, sending his police into Russian Orthodox churches, taking the Orthodox priests out, beating them, taking the parishioners out and beating them. Is there any truth to this accusation?
Not at all. Not at all. It's completely Russian propaganda. Completely. There is. Excuse me.
Yeah.
There are about 10,000 parishes of Ukrainian Orthodox Church, of Moscow Patriarchate, and they operate freely.
So the accusation that President Zelensky is cracking down on Christianity today in Ukraine, is that true? Is that happening?
It's not true. It's not true at all. And many people, not many people, but some people speculate that Ukrainian parliament going to adopt bill,
correct,
banning of Russian Orthodox Church. It's not true, because all what Ukrainian government asked Ukrainian Orthodox Church of Moscow Patriarchate is just ceased links to the centers in the country which committed aggression against Ukraine. Subordination to Moscow Patriarchate is not a part of Orthodox teaching. That government wouldn't like Orthodox Church to change Julian calendar, let's say, to change liturgy or something like this, or to be the part of another church.
Yeah.
Just stop links with
Moscow,
with centers.
Yeah.
Which committed aggression against Ukraine.
So just to
by the way, Ukrainian Orthodox Church of Moscow Patriarchate lost at least 14 priests during the shelling.
They died.
Yeah. They were killed.
So just to recap what Mr. Yelensky has just said, the Ukrainian government is basically telling churches that the Russian Orthodox churches that operate today in Ukraine that they cannot have allegiance to the Kremlin, that in essence they cannot support, they cannot have ties to organizations that support the war and the invasion of Russia into Ukraine. And that's kind of the controversy.
Let me give you just example from American history for comparison. In July 1776, U.S. Congress voted the law, condemned those who would pray for British Parliament and for British King as a traitor. Okay, and Anglican Church in the United States changed its name, its title, became Episcopalian Church. This is probably, it's not 18th century, but nobody condemned nowadays priest as a traitor. All what government need is to be sure that Kremlin is not operate in Ukraine.
Right. Folks, we are at the summit to highlight the atrocities that are taking place to people of faith around the world. This interview with Victor, we have focused on the plight of people of faith who live today in what used to be Ukrainian territory, the Donbass, the Donetsk region, the Mariupol region of eastern Ukraine, which I have traversed many a times over the last couple of years, and the plight that they are facing today, not just Christians, but Orthodox, Muslims, Jews who used to live there. Again, this is just an opportunity for us to take time to remember the suffering of our brothers and sisters across the various faith groups. So, Victor, thank you so much.
Thank you
for coming on the show. Folks, we will continue to bring live broadcasts here on the YouTube channel all throughout this afternoon. It is the last day of the summit. I hope you enjoyed the various people that we have brought to you, unique insight into the suffering as well as the joy that Christians around the full world, as well as other faith groups, they, in spite of the suffering, they continue to hold fast to their faith. If you've got questions, if you've got comments that I haven't had a chance to get to, please go ahead and put them in the second round. We'll answer some of those questions. And again, make sure you get alerted, get that notification sign buzzed on. That way you can know when we go live again. This is George Thomas for CBN News reporting from Washington, D.C.